Conformity is such a powerful influence that squashes the individuality, the creativity, the spontaneity, the authenticity of the masses. And most people are so blinded and enslaved by conformity that there's really no escape. One, it takes courage and risk and having a strong inner core of who you are. And we're just not raised that way. So it's not our fault. I mean, I think one, it's biologically influenced that you do seek approval in order, back in the caveman days or tribal days, if you didn't have the approval of your fellow clan or your tribe and you were kicked out of the group, death was probably imminent. So this has been so conditioned into us from a very young age, going to school, and I talk about this in a lot of other videos, but I think it's just such a powerful influence in our lives, to the point that we would rather seek approval and conform than live. And I'll explain that in a little bit shortly. But conformity is such a powerful influence that people will, on a subconscious level, stick to that, whether it's biological or social conditioning or the combination of both, then save their own lives. And if you've read the book, it's a good book called Outliers, by Malcolm. I don't quite remember his name. Somebody maybe could write the name in the comments. But he talks about some airplane accidents and what were the causes of these accidents as they listened to the black box, the flight recorders. And what they found is you have the captain and then you have the first officer, I guess it's called, or the co-pilot in the plane. And in a lot of these accidents, the co-pilot, the captain, he talks specifically about Korea. And in Korea, there's a culture of conformity, of respecting those that are above you, of kind of just having this almost like I don't want to say idolizing those above you, but there's just this big gap between those that are in charge and those that aren't, and you don't cross that line. It's considered disrespectful, and apparently there's huge consequences if you do cross a line. So that is so inbred and conditioned within them that there was Korean Airlines was having a lot of crashes, planes that were crashing. And as they listened to the flight recordings, they found that the co-pilot was aware that a problem was coming up, and the engineer was also aware that these problems were coming up, but they would voice it in a way that was a very submissive language that they would use. They would say, like, Captain, for example, if they were experiencing bad weather, they'd say, Captain, are you aware that there's a storm ahead, or the weather is really, really hectic today, or really, not hectic, really, there was a bad storm today, for example. And the captain say, oh, no problem, it's fine. And the co-pilot and the engineer, they realize they're in a grave situation that the captain is ignoring, but they refuse to cross that line, that invisible boundary, in order to get their point across. And even though they realized they're in severe danger, they kept their mouths shut and didn't say, Captain, listen, you need to wake up. We have a serious situation. We're going to crash. You need to change course immediately. Never came out of their mouths, even though they had that inclination that something severe was going to happen. There also was an interesting study. I'm sure if you Google it on YouTube, I'm not sure what you'd Google it under, or look for it on YouTube, where they have experiments where they would take people and put them in a room, and it would be a group of people, maybe 10 people in a circle. And only one person was the test subject, didn't know what was going on. The other 9 knew exactly what was happening. And there would be a fire, smoke coming from the other room under the door. And the one person that was the test subject would look, and you'd see the other people would just be calm and relaxed. And some of them would say, there's a fire, look, he would tell the other people, and the other people say, oh, don't worry, it's just a little smoke, we'll be fine. And the person would not leave, even though they thought there's a chance their life is in danger, just because they wanted to conform and they didn't want to stand out. There's countless examples. They have another really good video on YouTube where they have lines. So they have a series, I don't know, like 4 or 5 lines, and each line is different sizes, and one line is really long and the other ones are, you know, of varying sizes. And in the experiment, only one person is the test subject, doesn't know what's going on. All the other ones say that, for example, the middle line, they'll say that is the longest line. And it's so obvious that, let's say line C is the longest line. Everyone says, no, line B is the longest line. Line B is the longest line. And as they go down, everybody repeats the same thing. And as they get to the last person, the test subject, he agrees and conforms to what everybody else is saying. So my point is that it's so ingrained in us. And even people will say, you know, offhand, oh, I don't conform. I don't care what other people think. BS. It's something you always have to be vigilant of and aware by being conscious. Is this, am I conforming in this situation? And it comes to a point where you have to almost measure yourself by, Jim Carrey would perform on stage and he would, with the intention of getting booed off because he just didn't want to get attached to approval. Because he says you're not going to push your comedy beyond the edges. It will just stay in this narrow line unless you are okay with being booed off stage. And how many times are we booed off stage in our lives? How many times do we persevere even though we have people throwing their darts of scowls and disapproval at us? Do we still endure? Most of us, no. We probably don't. But it's just something that to be conscious of. I think his name is David Icke's. Was being interviewed, and he has a lot of different outlandish philosophies and theories, and like the reptilian. I'm not commenting on his philosophies, but it was really interesting. As he was being interviewed, the interviewer was like mocking him, like, do you realize how ridiculous your beliefs are? And you could hear the audience, the energy in the audience also was kind of that of, this guy's a loon, this guy's a nut, this guy's a... And he said, no. And he just dropped the gauntlet. He said, that's what you people always try to do. You try to squash independent thought, creative thought, individual thinkers through these words, through your disapproval, through your censoring. And he says, I'm not going to stand for it. You know, these are my beliefs basically, and this is my thoughts, and I'm going to express them regardless of you approve or disapprove. And once, as we drop those chains or those balls of conformity, and especially it's so prevalent for adolescents as well. But as we drop those balls of conformity, those chains of conformity, your spirit, your being starts becoming alive. You start feeling just a new exuberance for life. Because it's not dependent on what other people say or do. It's coming within. It's this fire. Like as you start stoking it, it becomes bigger and bigger. And some of the greatest achievements in history, people were ridiculed, burned at the stake, criticized, imprisoned, beaten for their beliefs. But they had a steadfast perseverance that they are going to be true to themselves instead of being true to other people's opinions. So that's what we need to ask ourselves as we get up and go through our days. Am I being true to self, or am I being true to the opinion of others? Now, some people say, well, I just can't be I have to conform at work. Maybe you do. Or maybe it's time to find a job that is more congruent with who you are. That you don't need to be a conformist. You can be an individual, be true to yourself, and still, earn a salary, and still love what you do, and still be passionate. And I think just the conformity is such a killer of dreams and identity and happiness that it's something just to be vigilant throughout the day. Thanks for listening, everybody.